Hi, and welcome back to the Eating Smart, Being Active in Action video series. Today we're looking at Lesson 2 of our ESBA curriculum. This lesson is entitled Plan, Shop, Save. Now we're going to be doing this lesson a little bit differently than we are most of the other lessons. In this case, Bertha Silva is actually training a group of our paraprofessionals, and she's training them to use the lesson by pretending that she's teaching the lesson to an actual group of participants. What we're going to do is sort of alternate back and forth from me to Bertha, and so we'll get a couple of different perspectives on how to teach Lesson 2. So let's go ahead and get started here with me for a little while. We're going to go ahead and take our lesson booklet and turn, as we always do, to the first page. This is an important page. There's no number here, but this is where we see the goal for the lesson and the messages and what the participants are going to do. So you can see here the goal is that families will plan and shop for meals and snacks that are healthy and fit within their budget. There are 4 key messages, and this is actually a lot of information, so the lesson's a bit complicated. The first one is that planning saves money and time. That using a shopping list can save money as well. That's number 2. Number 3, that comparing prices for food at the grocery store can save money. And number 4, you can also prevent running out of food before the end of the month by doing all 3 of the above. So these are the 4 main messages of the lesson. Now the lesson activities are going to have the participants do 4 different things. They're going to be planning a main dish from foods that are on sale. They're going to be making a shopping list for that dish. They're going to identify the main parts of the nutrition facts panel. And they're also going to use unit pricing to determine the best buy, comparing 2 different foods. So this is what we're going to be doing in the lesson. Let's go ahead and turn the page now. And this is our getting ready portion of the lesson. This again on pages 2 and 3 is just for your information, not for participants. So at the top of page 2, we have the checklist questions or the survey questions that relate to this lesson. And we'll see those pop up in the margins later on in the lesson plan. One of the questions is, how often do you plan meals ahead of time? So looking at meal planning. How often do you compare prices? How often do you run out of food before the end of the month? How often do you shop with a grocery list? And how often do you use the nutrition facts on the food label? So you can see this lesson relates to 5 of the questions on our survey. It's an important lesson. All right, let's look down here. Before the lesson, what are we going to want to do? Well, number 1, we want to review what we need to do, and that's what we're doing right now. And that also includes the information at the very back of this booklet, which, as you see here, has do not distribute to participants. This is information for you, and we're going to come back to this at the end of the lesson, and I'll go through some of that. So you're going to do that. You're going to plan ahead for your food tasting. And so in this lesson, you're going to be comparing 2 different versions of the same type of food, a store brand and a national brand. And Bertha is going to show how that works in a few minutes. But as it says here, you're going to want to have those 2 things ready to go. And you're going to want to write down the amount that you spent for each one of those. They should be the same size package. And then put samples of those into cups or bags, and we'll look at how that works later. And you, of course, want to bring the packages or the labels with you to the lesson. Okay, you also want to stop by the grocery store and pick up some flyers. And I've done that here. You're going to want to have 2 different grocery store flyers for each person. And what I suggest is you get the same flyers for everybody. So in this case, I have a dollar store flyer and I have a regular grocery store flyer. And every participant would get 1 of each. Now, it's interesting, dollar stores carry more and more food, and this is where a lot of people are shopping for food nowadays. So don't forget to look at these flyers as well as regular grocery store flyers. So 1 of each per participant. Then number 4, it says you want to decide how you're going to create a warm and welcoming environment, as we always do. Have your room nicely arranged, maybe some soft music, something out on the table that makes people feel welcome and not that it's a sterile classroom environment. Number 5, you want to use the lesson planning and preparation checklist, which comes with the curriculum. This is one way that you can plan your lesson. It has a front and a back side. You can use this, or you can use your own checklist if you'd like. It is helpful to have a checklist so you don't get to class and realize you've forgotten something. And finally, number 6, decide what activity you're going to be doing and be sure to bring the props for that activity. All right, so our lesson enhancement, we're reminded in the middle of the page, is a grocery list. And so in New Mexico, this is what our grocery lists look like. You're going to have one of these per person. The one that's in blue is actually the Spanish version. The green one for us is the English version. So one pad per person depending on the language that they speak. Now these are nice pads actually because what they have is the My Plate at the very top. So it helps people plan their grocery shopping based on the different sections for the different food groups. And then each food group has its own section. So you could write down if you want to buy apples, you'd write them in this top section. Maybe you want to buy some tortillas, you'd put them down here in the bread section right here. So it helps people think about foods in different categories and also make sure they're balancing out what they're buying at the store. So you're going to have one incentive item for each person. You will also need to pack the Eating Smart Being Active food labels. Bring enough so you can give out 2 different labels to each participant. I also suggest you pack some calculators, enough for 1 for every 2 participants. Then you're also going to have, it says bean bags here. This is for the Being Active activity. What we suggest you use instead are scarves. Sometimes we're in situations that are crowded, and a scarf actually, and if you wash these, they won't be quite as stiff. You can throw it in the air and it's the same type of activity, but they're not going to hurt anything if they hit anything. So you're going to want to have a set of scarves with you as well. And then your music CD, and this you can use at the beginning to set a nice tone as well as during your Being Active section of your lesson. Now the worksheets and handouts, you're going to want to have 1 worksheet and 1 handout per person. So this is what they look like, the Spanish version and the English version. The worksheet, as usual, is the sheet that folds out like this and has blank lines for you to write on. The handout is what goes inside, and it's just a front and a back, and there's nowhere to write. So have one of those one of each of those per participant. And that can all be in your activity bin. All right, let's go ahead and now look at the next page. You're going to want to have your display board ready to go, and I've got it sitting right here. You can see that the first picture on the display board is plan. So you want to have that one up when you start your lesson. Now let's look quickly and see how we're going to teach our lesson. This page is helpful because it lists how much time you want to allow for each of the different sections of the lesson. The thing that's missing though is it doesn't say what is happening in each of these. So you may look at this add activity and think, I'm not sure what that is. Well, that happens to be adding how to make a grocery list. And so you may want to write over here just as a reminder, oh, that's what that is. And you can do that for all of these so you know at a glance how long each of those sections should take. And after that, we're ready to start teaching the lesson. So we're here on page 6, and we're going to go over to Bertha and to our paraprofessionals and see how she trains them in a mock lesson for lesson 2. Let's see.
And so what we're going to do before we go into our topic today is that I want you to talk with your neighbor a little bit about the class we had last week. So if you all remember from last week, we talked about physical activity and how we can get moving. And so if you could turn to your neighbor and talk to them a little bit about how that worked for you this week. And then we'll discuss that both ways, and then we'll see what anybody wants to share. Okay, so go ahead and talk to your neighbor about what you did this week to be physically active. Well, I'll go ahead and share what happened with me. So remember I told you all last week one of my goals was to go to the Zumba class. So I went to the Zumba class here at the community center, and they were offering weights for those doing Zumba. So I thought, well, I could handle a few 3-pound weights. What's 3 pounds? So I actually hurt myself. So I would caution you, if you are going to start Zumba, maybe you ought to consider not starting with the weights like I did. So did anybody encounter anything like that? Or did it work out for everyone? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay.
Notice how Bertha shared a brief personal story about her experience with physical activity when she realized that her participants were a bit nervous to talk in front of the group.
So we're going to go ahead and start today's lesson. It's planning, shopping, and saving. And so all of you already plan and you already shop for your family some way or another. And everybody does it different ways. And some people plan and they ahead, like weeks ahead. And other people, they just go to the store and they buy food that they know their family likes. And then they plan the meal according to the food that they have on hand. And so we're already doing some of that in our families. We shop our own ways and plan our own ways. So what I want you to do is, again, share with a neighbor next to you how you plan and how you shop. What is the drill? What do you go through when you're going to go plan and shop for meals for your family? So go ahead and do that. So go ahead and one of you shares and I'll let you know and then we'll switch. Okay? Just want to remind you that go ahead and allow the other person to share so that everyone gets a chance to share. Okay, you did, but...
Notice how Bertha took a moment to look over her lesson plan while participants were conversing. This is a great way to keep on track.
Okay, thanks for sharing with your neighbor. So when we plan and shop for our families, everybody does it a different way. But we're going to talk a little bit about how the planning ahead can help us save money, and it also can help us build healthier meals. So if you start planning for your meals and you see that you're maybe missing some vegetables, if you write it all down, then you can add certain places where you're missing maybe one of the components and put it in there. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how important it is to plan and why we should plan.
It's helpful at this point to tell participants you will be sharing 4 reasons to plan your meals. As you mention each point, say that now you are sharing another reason to plan meals. That way all the reasons won't run together. Also, I suggest you use the PowerPoint slides of the display board images so everyone can see them better.
So when we plan for our meals, we usually save time. And so the way you save time is if you make the list ahead of time, when you go to the grocery store, you don't spend a lot of time going all over the store. Oh, I forgot this, and you run to the other end of the store and back and forth because something triggers you, reminds you of something else you forgot. So that'll help you save time. You save money because you buy only what you need. And so if you make a list, if you plan ahead for the meals and you make a list of what you need, therefore you're going to save money because you're not going to buy all the things that you didn't need. I would always forget tomato sauce. So then I'd have to run to the convenience store down the street, and the tomato sauce is like 10 times more expensive at the convenience store than it was at the grocery store. So it'll help you, you're less likely to run out of any food before the end of the month, and that way it helps you make sure that you have meals for your family till the end of the month. Have healthy meals and snacks. And so, like I said earlier, if you have the whole plan out, you can see if you're missing a component. Maybe you have too much on one component, and this way you can look at the whole list and balance it out so that it helps your families eat healthier meals. And you'll have those snacks on hand for when the kids get home from school, something quick, easy, and healthy for them to have when they get home.
Okay, so Bertha's finished with this part of the display board, and that brings us to the bottom of page 7. Let's look at the top of page 8 now. And it says here you're going to go through 4 different bullet points, getting started with a plan. So what I suggest you do, these are not connected to the worksheet or to the display board, so you're going to have to be a little bit engaging when you talk about these. What I suggest you do is do these separately from this part down here. Bertha is going to show us how she incorporates this part using the bottom of the display board here as she's doing the add activity, or I'm sorry, as she's doing the apply activity with the participants a little bit later. So we're just going to do this top part here. So let's go ahead and go through those first 4 bullet points. I suggest you talk to your participants first about how many days in advance they want to plan their meals for. It may be in the beginning they just want to think 1 or 2 days in advance, and later on they can think a week or 2 at a time. So let's say we're going to plan our meals for today and tomorrow. We want to think about first what we have on hand in the house, what's in the refrigerator and the freezer, what's in our cupboards, because those foods that are already there we want to use up first, especially if they're getting close to expiring. Then what we want to do is look at our grocery store flyers and we want to see what's on sale and plan meals around what's on sale based on what our family likes. Now, you probably have a number of meals in your family rotation, in your meal rotation, and you can ask participants at this point what meals their families like. And it's nice to serve those meals often so that you're sure your family's going to enjoy what they're eating, but not so often that they get tired of those meals. So after you've done this quick explanation of these 4 bullet points like I just did, we're going to go back and actually do this part of the lesson, which is on page 9, and Bertha's going to incorporate the bottom part of this display board into her teaching. Let's see how she does that.
And so when we're talking about that, about planning, we want to think also that with how we're busy we are in today's, if all of you work, your husband works and you work, or you're a single parent and you work, you can also include the kids in helping you plan. If they can help with a list, they help you with a list. They can help you look through your cupboards and see what it is that you already have and what you don't need to buy.
At this point, ask participants to share other ideas on how kids can help with meal planning. Don't forget to mention that kids are more likely to eat healthy meals and snacks when they are involved in planning and preparing them.
So today what we're going to do is I'm going to have you plan a main dish. And so I'm going to give you a worksheet, and I'm also going to give you some flyers. So I'm going to give you the worksheet, and right on top of the worksheet it says my main dish using food that's on sale. So I'm going to pass these out, and then I'll pass out the flyers from here locally that I got this week, so you can see what's on sale and we can plan a main dish with what's on sale. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and pass that out. And feel free to work in groups. So you can work in pairs or work the 3 of you together, whatever you're comfortable with. If the 3 of you want to work together, the 3 of you, 2 of you, that's fine. Okay? So here's the flyers. I'm going to go ahead and give you 2. I'm going to give you 2 flyers, even if you're working together. That way you can compare from the different grocery stores. So go ahead and I want you to use your flyers to look for what's on sale for you to plan a main dish. And you can work in your groups. Think about what would be something that your family likes that you could have for a main dish. Thinking of what you're going to make, you'll write the main dish down right here on that top line. Okay, what you decided to make as the main dish. So once we know what we're planning for our main dish, and if all of you want to look up here, we're going to look at my display. And once you decide what you're going to make as a main dish, you have a slot in your worksheet where you can write down everything you need to make that main dish. And when you're thinking about what you're going to make, think about what you're going to need to cook it too. Somebody had said over here the steaks were on sale. If you decide to do steaks, remember, are you going to grill them? Do you have charcoal? Do you need lighter fluid? Think of all the things you need to prepare that main dish also. If you need foil, if you're going to make chicken, are you going to broil it? Are you going to bake it? Will you need foil? Will you need Pam spray? Because that's something else you have to remember to get at the grocery store, right? And that'll help you figure out how it is that you're going to prepare that meal. So I want you to go ahead, considering that main dish, and go ahead and make a list of all the items that you're going to need to make that main dish. Then we're going to think about what do we have in our cupboards. Like, think about if you're at home, you'd go look in your cupboards and see, do I already have the Pam spray? Do I already have the foil? Do I already have some chicken? Think of what you have. You already have butter. You can cross that out. Okay. And sometimes you might have to take a guess, right? Because we're not there at home. But the whole idea is for you to try to think about what you already have and know that we need to cross it out and not rebuy more, right? Once you have those items crossed off your list, okay, you'll have some that you still have. For example, here, they were going to make spaghetti, and they wrote their list. They needed spaghetti noodles, ground beef, tomato sauce, Italian seasoning, and Parmesan cheese. Well, when they went through their cupboards in their pantry, they noticed that they already had the spaghetti noodles, they already had the Italian seasoning, and they already had Parmesan cheese. So now what they have left on their list is ground beef and tomato sauce. Okay? So what they're going to do now is we're going to write down how much of that will we need to buy. Of those items that we have left on our list, how much do we need to buy? And kind of think about, if you're going to make this meal on a Wednesday, is everybody going to be home on that Wednesday, or do the kids have maybe after school activities? So those are the kind of things you need to consider when you're planning your meals for certain days. Is everyone going to be there? Maybe a guest is going to come over. So you need to write down how much of that chicken you would buy, or how much of that ground beef you would buy to feed your family on that day. So for those items that you still have on your list, go ahead and write down how much you would buy for them. Does anybody need help with that process? Does anybody need help in figuring out how much you would need of a certain item? Okay, so now that you saw how we can plan a meal, we can plan and make a list for a main dish. Do you think this is something you could do maybe for a week or maybe a couple of days? Do you think that's something that is doable, that you could probably maybe try maybe once or twice? A couple of days might help at first, yeah. Because it's a lot of work, to think about what to plan, what I want to make the next day. But it could be really helpful when you come home from work and you already have the whole plans already set in place. All you have to do is do it instead of having to waste some time to think, oh gosh, what am I going to make, right? So you feel free to take these flyers with you. You can have them.
Okay, so Bertha did a nice job teaching people how to make a list there. Don't forget at the bottom of this page, this is the bottom of page 9, to tell people about the incentive item for this lesson. It mentions it right here. So again, what you're going to do is pull out your incentive items and tell each participant they're going to get one of these grocery pads, and that this is a reminder with the My Plate symbol and the different food groups here, how they can use My Plate to help them plan healthy meals for their families. And at the end of the lesson, don't forget to give one out to each participant. All right, so now we're going to go back to Bertha, and she's going to pick up with the next section of our lesson, which is the being active portion.
And so what we're going to do now is we're going to be a little bit active. Remember I told you that from last week that every class we're going to have a little bit of physical activity. So those of you that feel comfortable, go ahead and stand up and push your chairs in. If you're not too sure, you can go ahead and watch us and see if it's something that you can do.
Notice how Bertha makes everyone feel comfortable. She encourages participation but doesn't require it. It's also nice that she puts on some music.
I want you to go ahead, first of all, and we want to do a stretch. We want to do a stretch, so everybody wants to take a deep breath. An exhale. Again, in a deep breath. An exhale. And this time I want you to reach up with on your tippy toes and then push up against the sides as you go down. And let's do that again, a deep breath. And exhale as you're coming down and push out on the sides. Okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to march in place. So if you're wearing heels and you want to take them off, you don't feel very comfortable in heels, go ahead. So we'll be marching in place. Okay? So this is like chewing gum and walking. Some people, I can't really do that really well. But what we're going to do is we're going to march in place, right? And then we're going to punch to we're going to start with the right hand, okay? And we're going to punch up, straight up to the ceiling, okay? And we're going to start with the right hand. Ready? Punch, punch. Alternate hands. Again, again, and again. Okay, back to marching in place. Yeah, just loosen up a little bit. Okay, now we're going to go forward and right, left, left. Okay, march in place. Is everybody feeling okay? Everybody's feeling fine? Okay, now we're going to do it to the side, but I want you to make sure you watch what you're punching to your side. I know you might want to punch your friend, but today's not the day, okay? So go ahead and punch to the right, to the left, to the right, and to the left. Keep marching in place. Don't forget to march in place. Again, to the right, and to the left, and to the right, and to the left. Okay, stop and take a deep breath again. Okay, so we're going to do a stretch, and I'm going to come up to the front so you can see me. What we're going to do is get our heels close to our buttocks.
Remember to refer to the ESBA exercise DVD if you have questions about how to lead this stretch.
I want you to grab your leg your left leg from your ankle, not from your toes or your pant leg, okay? So go ahead and lift it. Keep it as close as you can to the other knee as possible, okay? And you'll feel a stretch. We'll hold it there for 15 to 20 seconds. Okay, now let's do the other side. Okay, again, make sure you keep your knee close to the other one. Hold it to your buttocks. If you're feeling any pain, go ahead and release. Okay, and release that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to play a game and we're gonna get a little bit active. So I need you to be really alert. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna play hot potato, okay? And what I need you to do is this is the hot potato and you can't hold it for very long, okay? So you need to get rid of it really quick, okay? So make sure you're watching, and if you know it's coming to you, be alert and be ready for it, okay?
With this size group, it would be good to use
really hot.
2 bean bags. If you have a larger group than this, break the group into 2 if possible. If your participants might have trouble catching bean bags, or there are breakable items in the room, you can use balloons instead. Plan on 1 balloon for every 2 to 3 people, and bring the participants closer together.
Okay, so go ahead and have a seat. Thank you for playing with that with me.
Don't forget to do the cool down. It's the same as the warm-up.
This is a game that you could probably play with your kids or with other family members and to be active. I was thinking that maybe when you toss it around, you could be doing the twist at the same time to be more active. That's something that you could also do as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you a bathroom break so you can wash your hands, because we're gonna do a little tasting when you get back. So go ahead and take a break and wash up your hands, and then we'll meet back here in about 2 minutes.
This is a nice way to describe hand washing, as a short break.
I'm gonna give you 2 different cereals. One's a national brand and one's a store brand. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass out a baggie labeled A, okay? So this is sample A. So you can go ahead and start tasting it and see what you think.
You can use baggies like Bertha did, or cups as the lesson suggests. Baggies may be easier because you can prepare them before you get to class. In either case, the samples you prepare should be about half as large as the ones shown here. Otherwise, you'll find that much of the cereal is wasted.
And then I'm going to give you sample B. So one's a national brand and one's a store brand. I'm not going to tell you which is which quite yet. I want you to taste both of them and see what you think.
Don't forget to ask participants to compare how the products look as well, just like this woman is doing.
So, does anybody want to share what they think about the 2 different cereals? Which one, what they think about A, what they think about B?
A is national and B is.
Okay, you think that that's the breakdown? Okay, and why do you think? Why?
I think A has more sugar than B does.
You think A has more sugar, and so that would make it a national brand? Okay. What else? Anybody?
Notice how Bertha repeated what the participants said. This is especially important when a participant has a quiet voice, as this one does.
They're both sweet.
They're both sweet. Okay.
They don't taste different.
They don't taste different. Okay.
I think they both taste the same.
They're
Tastes
pretty
about the
similar,
same.
but
I think A has
I have the same ideas as you.
I think A is like post or one of the, and this may be a one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is the national.
Anybody else?
Flakes are bigger in A.
So flakes are bigger than A. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would make it, you think, the national then?
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
I think it tastes mostly the same except for the sugar.
So you think A is sweeter?
It tastes sweeter. to me,
Okay.
but
Okay. So these are the
slightly
2.
different.
Slightly different, you said?
Just
Slightly sweeter? Okay. So these are the 2 different brands that I bought.
Notice how Bertha cut off the front and side panel of each cereal box. That way she has all the information she needs, but these pack up more easily than bringing an entire empty box.
This was the Kellogg's Raisin Bran and the Great Value Raisin Bran cereal. Okay, so A was the national brand and B was the store brand. So those were your samples, and I think you guessed it pretty close. But a lot of you said that it tasted the same, so it was pretty. The taste wasn't too different. There was some differences that you said that maybe the flakes were a little bigger. You said maybe it was a little sweeter. Okay, so but what we want to do is we want to kind of try to see and compare the prices in the store. Since the similarity were very similar in taste, then what we will end up doing is we could buy the store brand and save some money for our family. I paid $2.98 for this, and I paid $1.98 for this. So it's a whole $1 difference, okay? And they're both 20 ounces. Both boxes are 20 ounces. This one just for some reason looks a little bigger. So it's important for us to check prices. So there's other things that you can look on the products to gain more information. One of the things is the nutrition facts. And does everybody see that we have a nutrition fact here on the side of this box? Well, I'd like you to open up your worksheets, and inside your worksheet you have a label as well. And it happens to be for Raisin Bran too. So one of the first things we want to start when we look at a label is to look at the serving size. So does anybody want to call out the serving size on that label they have there? 1 cup. So you want to go ahead and circle that? I'm going to circle that. So what we're going to do is we're going to look real briefly at the label. And next week we'll look at a little bit more details on different parts of the label. Today we're just going to look at it and see what's available there on the label for us. Okay? So this says it's 1 cup. Is that what you all would have for breakfast, 1 cup of cereal? Or what do you think you would have? Would you have more? Is that a typical serving size? 1 cup? Yeah?
I thought that I would have a little more.
Me too. I would have maybe 2 cups or a cup and a half maybe. Okay?
Yeah, that makes a difference. The size of the bowl.
The size of the bowl, yeah. Okay.
That's a really interesting conversation Bertha's having with her participants, and I suggest that you capitalize on this teachable moment and take a little time to do an additional activity. Bring with you a 1 cup dry measure and then 2 cereal bowls of different sizes. Now these look like they're about the same size, but we'll see in a second that they're actually not. Then what you'll do is ask for a volunteer and have that volunteer pour the cereal into the 1 cup measure, which is the serving size. So here you have a cup of cereal, and go ahead and empty it into one of the bowls. And now you're going to have another volunteer measure out another cup of cereal into the other bowl. So you can see both of these have 1 cup of cereal in them. But which one looks like it has more cereal? This bowl on the left is a little bit smaller, even though it doesn't on the surface appear to be that much smaller. So you're likely to pour less cereal into this bowl. So if your participants are trying to cut back on calories, maybe maintain a healthy weight, they can invest in some smaller dishes, even at a garage sale, smaller glasses and smaller plates, and that's going to help them serve smaller portions.
So there's other things that you can look at. So I want you to go ahead and look at the next section. Does everybody has it on the label, but I'm also showing it to you here. It says to check for calories. Does anybody want to call out the calories on that label? 190. Go ahead and circle that. And so those calories are for the serving size for 1 cup. So if me and my friend here, we have 2 cups, how many calories would we have? We'd have double the amount, right? Okay, so we just have to remember that we can have more, but we have to double the amount of calories that we're having, correct? Okay, so I want you to look at that. And then what you'll also find is on the rest of the label, there's some nutrients also to the bottom Mine are highlighted in beige. If you see yours, they're right in the center. And it's total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, and sodium. Do you all see those? So those are nutrients that we want to limit, okay? And then if you look at the bottom, you're going to see other nutrients like vitamin A, calcium, vitamin C, and iron. Does everybody see those? And we want to get enough of those. And we've all heard about these nutrients, correct? So something else that I want to show you about the label. Does everybody see to the right? It has a percentage. This is the daily value, the percentage of daily value. Does everybody see that? Can you all point to where the daily value is at? Okay. And the daily value, and what it is, it's the daily value is the amount of a nutrient in one serving size, compared to the amount of the recommended for a 2,000 calorie diet. Okay? So that's kind of confusing, huh? Like what does that mean? Did everybody see a dietary fiber on there? Would like somebody like to call out what's the daily value, percentage daily value of the dietary fiber? 28%. So what we can do with this daily value, this information, is we can compare two of the similar products and see which one's higher in one nutrient and which one's lower in another nutrient.
So at this point, Bertha's talking about percent daily value, which is a little bit confusing. The lesson plan in the middle of page 16 says that you can compare two types of breakfast cereals and see how much fiber they have. Now, it doesn't say this, but I think it's important to add. If you've been tasting a name brand and a store brand of Raisin Bran, the fiber in those cereals is going to be almost exactly the same, if not equal. So what I suggest you do is bring an empty box of cereal, and you can do like Bertha did, and just cut off the front part of it along with the nutrition facts label, or you can bring the whole box like I did. This is actually a type of cereal that people like. It doesn't have a lot of sugar, but what is interesting is it doesn't have a lot of fiber either. And so I suggest you take this out at this point and say, let's compare this to our Raisin Bran. And you can look here on the nutrition facts label and pass it to a participant, a volunteer, and ask them to tell the rest of the class how much fiber is in this type of cereal. And for one serving of this cereal, which is 1 ounce, you can see it has 0 grams of fiber, which is 0% of the daily value. And participants, when they look on their worksheet, they're going to notice that that's very different from Raisin Bran, isn't it? Raisin Bran has 7 grams of fiber, or 28%, which makes it a good source of fiber. So that's a very obvious difference that you can do. You can explain to participants. It's not that this is a bad choice, it's just that it doesn't have a lot of fiber.
And I can look at the dietary fiber, and if it says it has 28%, I would consider that high. So 5% of a daily value is low, and 20 and above is high. Okay? So if something is 5% and lower, it's low, and if it's 20% or higher, it's high in that nutrient. Okay? So your dietary fiber that you just saw right now, and you said it was 28%, would that be high or low? High. Okay. So let's look at something else on that label that you have. Okay. Let's look at iron. Who wants to call out what the daily percentage value for iron is? 25%. Very good. So is that high or low? High. Okay. Let's look at the vitamin A. 10%. 10%. Would that be high or low? Well, remember I said 5 and under is low. So it was in the middle range, right? It's in the middle range.
Rather than look at vitamin A, as Bertha did, I suggest you look at calcium. Ask participants if the cereal is a good source of calcium. They should tell you that it's not, because it only has 2% of the daily value. Point out that they will likely be eating their cereal with milk, which itself is a good source of calcium. Don't try to look at folic acid as the lesson plan suggests. It's not on the label.
I'm going to give you some labels, and so you all can look at different labels. And I'll ask you some questions and see how comfortable you feel at looking at those different items that we just went through on the label. So we want you, the first thing I want you to look at is the serving size, okay, of the products that you have.
Ideally, give each participant 2 labels that make sense to compare. For example, 2 types of cereal, or 2 different snack foods, or 2 different beverages. Don't give the same labels to every participant.
Okay, so go ahead and start looking at your labels.
So the labels that Bertha just passed out are part of the activity bin that we've made for you. What I suggest you do is divide those labels into groupings that make sense. So for example, you're going to want to give one person a whole wheat bread label and a white bread label. And these 2 would go to one person. And what I suggest you do is you paper clip those together so that you've got them all ready to go and already separated. You could give white flour and wheat flour to another person. You could give 2 types of snack candy to another person. You could give 2 types of rice to a 4th person. You can see how this is going, so everybody's having things that will make sense to compare, but they're not all comparing the same things. Now, there are a lot of cereals in this package, but we've already talked so much about cereals that I suggest you use other foods. We've got macaroni and cheese, we've got different kinds of chips, different kinds of crackers. Those are some other things that are good to distribute to your participants. Now, the other thing that last week's lesson asked participants to do was bring labels from their own foods. So if anybody actually did that, you're going to make sure that you're going to have them compare those labels as well, because you want to value their participation and the effort that they've made to bring those foods in. So be sure to ask if anybody's brought those labels at the start of this activity.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions about the labels, and you can feel free to answer them if you feel comfortable with answering that question about your label.
Bertha does a good job making sure participants know they don't have to answer the questions if they don't feel comfortable doing so. It's also good that she goes first.
Okay, I'll ask you a few questions. I'll go first, and I'll tell you what I have. So the question is, how many grams of fiber in one serving size? So my answer would be, I have Raisin Bran. My serving size is 1 cup, and if I look down to the fiber, it has 7 grams of fiber for 1 cup, okay?
I suggest you follow this by asking other participants to share how many grams of fiber are in one serving of their foods. You can even write these up on the board. Then have participants identify those foods that are high in fiber, 20% or more of the percent daily value.
So I'll ask another question, see who wants to answer. So what percent of daily value of iron does the food have? So tell me what you have, what the serving size, and what the daily value of iron that food has. Okay, Jackie?
I have enriched long grain rice. The serving size is 1/4 cup, and the iron is 6%.
6%. Very good. Okay.
One of the points of this activity is to show participants that they can use labels to compare foods. Don't just stop with one person finding iron on her label. Ask some of the others to find it too. Then ask if any of the foods are a good source of iron.
So who has a food with a serving size that's smaller than what you usually eat? Samantha, what do you have?
I have Snickers,
Oh.
and the serving size is 1/3 of the bar.
So 1/3 is the serving size. So all the nutrients, all the rest of the information on that label would be just for 1/3 of that bar. Okay. Yeah. So it's real important for us to look at the serving size when we first get a product, so we could see what, and some of the serving sizes are standardized for certain products. Okay. Like for Raisin Bran, it'll be 1 cup for all the Raisin Brans, even if it's a no brand. Okay. Who has a food that has only 1 serving per container? Does anybody have a food that has? You do? What do you have, Aspen?
The Skittles serving size is 1 bag.
Oh, wow. Okay. Not 1/3 of the bag?
No.
No, like the bar.
I don't have to count them.
You have to count them out. So that, so all her facts are for the whole bag on that one. That one does too?
One bun.
One bun. Okay.
Remember to have the participants explain what their products are. After you ask this question, ask participants how they could know how many calories were in this food if they only ate half the package. They should say they would figure out what is 1/2 of the calories listed on the label.
How do you not get bogged down when you are comparing like this label and that label, and all of a sudden there's all these percentages and grams and quarter cup and half cup, and I just pick one.
So
what
is that
tips do you like? What things do you use? Like, do you target? Like, when you're shopping, what tips do you use to kind of really sort out the really necessary information on the label, so
Okay.
you don't get so bogged down with all the numbers?
okay? So there's certain things that might pertain to me more, that are I take seriously more than others. And so, for example, for me, my husband has high blood pressure, so I have to always watch the sodium. So for me, that's something I look at first before anything else. I look at the serving size and I look at the sodium, because my husband's health depends on that. So you might want to talk to your doctor. Maybe there's certain things that you want to look at. I do know when people are trying to lose weight, they'll look at calories, and they'll cut down maybe on the serving size. But there's certain thing, whatever works for you. I wouldn't want you to look at the whole label all at once, because it could be overwhelming, and then you give up after a while, because it is a lot of numbers. So you want to focus on a few things, and maybe a few months later, gain one more item to look at. And now that I've given you some skills on how you can compare them, you can go into the store and make another comparison. Like if they have another store brand or a different that's not a national brand, you can look at that and compare it. But I really want you to take back with you that it's really important for us to look at the serving size and be able to compare nutrient amounts by using the daily value. Those percentages, the 20 would be high and 5 would be low, okay? So when I talk about unit pricing, I'm talking about the price for a unit of measurement, and most of the time it's an ounce, of the product. So if you can see up here, I know we're kind of spread out and there's some glare on here.
So this is the display board picture that Bertha's on right now. As you can see, though, it's really small, and she's having trouble having her participants look at it. So what we have done is actually created some slides on a PowerPoint that you can use instead. This is really way too much information on one page. So what I'm going to show you here in a few minutes is an alternative to going through this. The other reason we don't want you using this page is if you look here in the middle, the peaches that you're comparing are the same size can. So there's no point in doing unit pricing if the can is the same size. All you need to do is look at the price and you know which one's a better deal. The same thing is true on the bottom here. This shredded cheese, both of these are the same size packages. So we're not really helping people learn unit pricing in a way that's helpful to them. So let's take a look at the slides that we've developed, and I'll walk you through those a little bit as if you were participants so you can kind of see how they work. You can look here at the first slide. What are we going to be comparing here? And your participants will say, oh, macaroni. And that's fine. You don't have to go into any more detail. If they're particularly observant, though, they may recognize that there are two different kinds of macaroni, and that's fine, but you don't need to point that out if they don't at this point. So then you're going to go on and click, and that will advance you to the next page, and ask the participants what they see here. They should tell you they see the same types of macaroni, and they see the shelf label, which shows the price and the unit price. Now tell participants the first thing to look at is the size of the package. When you click, this yellow arrow will come up, pointing out the size of the large bag of pasta. And that is a 24-ounce bag, so click the cursor again and that will come up on the screen. So even though it may be a little bit small for participants to see, we have the writing on the screen so that they know that's a 24-ounce bag. Then click the cursor again, and you'll be able to the participants can tell you how big this box of macaroni is. And that is, if you click again, 13.25 ounces. So already you can see these are two foods that are hard to compare because the size of one is not a simple multiple of the other. It's not 12 ounces and 24. It's sort of off in the middle, and so the prices are going to be really hard to compare unless we use unit pricing. So now we know how big the size of the containers are. What do we want to look at next? What we want to do is look at the unit price. So ask participants if they can find the unit price on the label, the shelf label on the bag of pasta. And if they're having trouble finding it, just click and the blue arrow points to that unit price. And what it says then, have your participants call that out and click again and it will show the unit price is 11.2 cents per ounce. Now ask your participants where the unit price is on the box of pasta. The blue arrow will point to it. Click again and you can see that unit price is the same. So very interesting here. We have two different sizes of pasta and yet they cost the same per ounce. So far we don't really know which type of pasta we should buy, do we? And that's why we have a question mark come up when you click the cursor one more time. Now click the cursor and you'll advance to the next page. What we're going to do is turn the containers over and look at the nutrition facts. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So ask the participants on the left-hand side which label this is, and they should recognize this is the bag of pasta, and tell them when you click that we're going to be questioning how much fiber is in each of these two types of pasta. So ask your participants if they can see the fiber on the bag of pasta. And you can click your cursor and it'll come up with the blue arrow showing where that is on the label. That's 2 grams. And can you find it on the box of pasta? Again, the blue arrow shows you, and this time it's 5 grams. Now, is fiber something that we want to eat more of? Your participants should say yes. And so then what is the better choice here? Which do you think is a better choice for your family? Well, the pasta with more fiber is going to be a better choice, and that happens to be the whole wheat pasta. That's the difference between these two types of pasta, actually. Even though they're different sizes, they're made by different manufacturers, they cost the same, but one of them is a healthier option because it's made of whole wheat flour. It's a whole grain food. Now we're going to go to the second pair of foods to compare. So we've talked about pastas, now we're going to move to something that comes in cans. So go ahead and click again, and you'll see here we are at the grocery store in a separate aisle. We're looking at what? Your participants should recognize this as tomato sauce. And how are these two cans of sauce different? Well, your participants should say one of them is a lot bigger than the other one. So click and then you'll come up to this screen, and this is where we're going to do our comparison. So ask your participants, what do we want to look at first? They should say to look first at the size of the container. Ask them to find this information on the small can first, which is on the left. Click and you'll see the yellow arrow come up. When you click again, the slide shows that it's an 8-ounce can. Now ask your participants to look at the right side. How big is the larger can? After they look for a moment, click again and another yellow arrow comes up. Click again to show that the large can holds 29 ounces. So again, you can see these two containers are going to be challenging to compare unless we have unit pricing available. So now you know how big the containers are. What do you want to look at? Your participants should know they want to look at the price. So where is the unit price on the left side? Click and it'll show it with a blue arrow, and ask your participants, what is the unit price? That's correct, 4.1 cents per ounce. Now on the right side, it's a little bit trickier. You can see that there is a unit price up above. It says 5.3 cents per ounce, but that price is actually no longer correct. And the reason for that is we have a new price on this product. We have a sale going on, and that's that big yellow label at the very bottom. And that's indicated here when you click your cursor again by the blue arrow. So what that means, 4 for $5. You buy 4 of these cans, you'll pay $5. So if there's no unit price here that makes sense, how are we going to figure this out? This is where you should get out your calculators, and participants can work together and share calculators, and you should have one as well. So on the right hand side, what is the price per can? Well, if you click the cursor, it'll tell you. $1.25 each. Work with your participants to do the math on your calculators. 4 divided by 5 equals $1.25 per can. 1.25, and then the divide sign, and you divide it by 29 ounces. So you can see it says 0.043. That means 4.3 cents per ounce. So click on your cursor and you'll see that that comes up here. So now we can compare the two products. The small can costs 4.1 cents an ounce. The large can costs 4.3 cents an ounce. Ask your participants which is the better deal. Well, they should be able to tell you the small can in this case is the better deal. And that might be a little bit surprising. We often hear, oh, the large container is always a better deal. It's not necessarily true. So that's why it's important to use unit prices, to take your calculator with you when they're sale items, and you can actually calculate. And especially if you only need a small amount of tomato sauce, you're definitely in this case going to want to buy the small can. All right, so that's our second comparison. Now we're going to move to the dairy aisle and click on your computer, on your cursor, and you'll see this image come up. Ask your participants what they see. It may take them a few seconds to figure it out, but on the left-hand side, you have shredded cheese, and on the right-hand side, you have a block of solid cheese. They're exactly the same kind of cheese, they're just in a different form. So ask your participants, where do we want to start now to compare these two products? They should know by now we start with the size of the container. So what is the size of the container on the left? Well, it's very hard to find, but the yellow arrow will show you when you click on the cursor. And that says it's an 8-ounce bag of shredded cheese. How about on the right-hand side? You can see it a little better right here. And that is going to show you that it's a 16-ounce block. So in this case, we have one container that's twice the size of the other. 8 times 2 equals 16. But we have another situation of sale prices, and in this case there's sales on both of the items. So how are we going to figure out what the unit price is? Remember, you can't rely on the unit price that's on the store label if there's a sale. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. So let's start with the shredded cheese. We need to figure out how much one package costs. So it says 2 packages cost $7. So let's go back to our calculators and we're going to take $7. So type in 7 and divide that by 2 bags of cheese, and that's going to tell us, if you press the equal sign, that each bag costs $3.50. 3.5 is $3.50 for a bag of cheese. So click your cursor and that'll come up again on the PowerPoint. Now we still need to know though what the unit price is. So we'll take that $3.50, just leave it on your calculator, and now we divide it by the total number of ounces in the bag. So divide by 8 and press equals, and you can see we get 0.4375, which is about 44 cents per ounce. So click the cursor again, and you'll see that that comes up 44 cents an ounce. So we have our price on the shredded cheese. Now clear your calculator out. We're going to figure out the price on the block of cheese. Where is the price on that label? Well, it's that big yellow label down below, 5.99. So type that in, 5.99. And we only need to divide it by 1. We really don't need to use the calculator for this because it's just for one package. So we know, click on your cursor again, that one package costs $5.99. Now what do we need to do? We have to figure out our unit price. So how do we do that? We keep 5.99 on our calculator and we divide that, press divide, by the number of ounces that are in this container, which in this case is our 16. So type in 1, 6, and then press equal. And you see we get 0.37, which is 37 cents. So bring that up on your PowerPoint again. You can see now, comparing the prices of the cheese, the block is cheaper than the shredded cheese. It's about 7 cents cheaper per ounce. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're buying a pound of cheese, that's going to save you over $1. Now, is it something that's easy to do to shred cheese? It's pretty easy, and if you have older children, you can put them to work doing that for you. And if you don't need to use it all at once, you can put it into a Ziploc bag, put it in your freezer, and then bring it out when you do need to use it. So in this case and in most cases, shredding cheese yourself saves you money. But as you can see here, you can't just look at the unit prices on the label. So many times nowadays we have sales at our grocery stores. So it's really helpful to carry a calculator with you. Once you figure out how to do this, it'll go so quickly, and your participants will really enjoy having this skill. It's going to make them feel a lot more powerful when they go shopping, and they're going to know that they're getting the best deals. So that's how our new PowerPoint is going to work with this lesson. I think you'll find that your participants understand unit pricing a lot better, and they'll actually get some practice in making those calculations. After you finish the PowerPoint, you'll want to pick up at the bottom of page 20 of your lesson plan. This is where participants work through a unit pricing example on their worksheet. Let's see how Bertha teaches it.
So we're comparing two chunks of cheese, right? One chunk of cheese on your worksheet, right, is 32 ounces. Yes? And how much is it for the 32 ounce? $7.99.
It's easiest to refer to this cheese from now on as the large block of cheese.
Okay. And then the 8-ounce cheese is how much? $2.99.
Call this the small block of cheese to make it clear we are comparing different sizes.
It kind of seems like the $2.99 is the better deal, correct? But let's look at the unit pricing. Does everybody see that to the right-hand side? Okay. That's the price per ounce. So who wants to tell me how much the price per ounce is for a block of the cheese at $7.99? Does anybody want to call it out? 25 cents, right? And how about the one for $2.99? What's the 37.4? So which would be the better buy? Yeah, the 25 cents, right? The $7.99. So let's go ahead and circle that unit pricing. So that would be a better deal if you can use that cheese before it spoils, correct? Because we don't want to buy that and then it spoils on us, and then we ended up throwing money away, right? So we can freeze cheese. And if you have a freezer, that's something you might want to be able to do for your family, is be able to save the cheese. Okay? Does everybody see that on there? Is there any questions on that? So I'll tell you what the unit pricing for this was.
The lesson plan suggests that you share the unit prices for the store brand and the generic brand that you tasted earlier. However, the containers are the same size, so we don't need to look at the unit pricing. I suggest you leave this part of the activity out, since you mentioned the prices you paid for each item earlier. That means that after you finish the worksheet, you'll go straight on to the review.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pass out a review sheet for us to review together what we've talked about today. And you can put all this in your little folder I've given you. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our review sheet together. Okay, and I want you to look at the very front where it says saving money when food shopping. So we talked about how it's important to plan ahead and make a shopping list when we go to the grocery store. That'll help save time and save money. So we buy exactly what we need. And we did notice with the unit pricing that if we buy larger amounts, we get better deals. But again, we have to make sure that we use it before it spoils. Okay? Using the flyer as well. So I went and got you a few flyers from the local grocery stores, and so that's a good way too. Usually here in town they put them in your mail on Tuesdays, so if you look out for those and you can compare.
The handout mentions store discount cards, but you only need to talk about them if they're available in your area.
And then it says shop when you're not hungry. That's something that I need to learn too, because I always go shopping after work and I'm really starving, so I buy all kinds of things. So I made it a little thing for me now. I put a little granola bar on my desk, so I'll eat that on the way out, so I won't be so hungry when I go to the grocery store. Okay? And then it says to allow enough time to read labels and make healthy choices for the family. So today we did look a little bit at the label, and like Jackie had pointed out, there's a lot of numbers on there, and so we kind of want to just start slow with the labels and kind of look at the serving size and maybe compare a couple of nutrients like we did today to see if it's something that maybe you want to add to later on. Compare the cost by using the unit pricing, and we did that with a few things here on my display board and on your worksheet. So go ahead and turn that review sheet over. And something that we didn't really talk too much about, food safety when we're shopping at the store. So a lot of us have seen those really great buys with the dented cans. Oh, we really have to be careful with that, because remember, once that can is open, it's allowing bacteria to grow in that can, and we can get really sick. And so that would be more expensive if we have to end up taking our family to the doctor. That'd be a higher expense, right? And then we want to put refrigerated or frozen items away first as soon as we get home, because they've been out for a while. We don't want to leave them out more than 2 hours, okay? And then on the bottom it says, don't store food or drink in glazed pottery from Mexico and Asia. So I'm going to tell you right now, I was really surprised with that too, because I always use this really special bowl that my grandma gave me, and I didn't know that what would happen to me or my kids. And I would always put my fruit on there because I thought it was really pretty. But we do have to be careful with the lead poisoning that can occur from those. Okay, so make sure you look at that in your home. And then finally, you get a label like the one that I had on my display board that helps you look at the serving size, and you'll see it in green. And then you'll also see in yellow, kind of like alerting you to check the calories. And then in the beige shaded area, these are the nutrients we want to limit. And then you're going to see in the blue area those are the nutrients we want to get enough of. We're going to want to get 100% of those, right? 100% of the daily value of those. And then you're going to see in the pink, and that's the quick guide to the daily value that we looked at today. And 5 would be low, and 20. High would be 20 and up, and low would be 5 and under. Does everybody see that? Does anybody have questions about my review sheet?
When you go over the review sheet, engage your participants by asking them questions. For example, you could ask them why they shouldn't buy dented cans, or why glazed pottery from Mexico can be dangerous.
So what I'll be giving you today to help you plan and shop is a grocery list to help you plan a little better this week. So I want you to look at the back of your worksheet, and we talked about a lot of things today. And the back of the worksheet is going to help us focus on what we're going to do during the week before I see you again. And it says, on the very top, it says, one thing I can do to save money this week. So we talked about making a list, we talked about planning meals, and we talked about unit pricing too. And so what is one thing you think you can do this week to help you save money? So go ahead and write that down. What's something that you'll do this week? She's pretending. Okay, and then right under there it says, a new physical activity I will try this week. So I know last week we talked about walking and all the benefits, and we talked about encouraging our family members to join us too. And today we played a little bit of hot potato. So if you want to put that as something you might try. So next week we're going to have our lesson on fruits and vegetables and how to make half our plate fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to be making a fruit salad for those of you that like fruit. I'm going to be making a fruit salad for us. We're all going to make it together. We're going to work on making a really delicious fruit salad together, and hopefully you'll be able to share it with your family as well if you try it at home. But I want to make sure that you write down our next lesson here, and that's next week at the same time here at the community center at 10 o'clock. And you will be taking home one of these next week. Today I gave you the grocery list, and next week I'll give you a produce brush so you can clean your produce before you all eat them. Okay, so make sure you come for next week so you guys can get your produce brush.
It's a great idea to mention the incentive that you'll hand out next time, as Bertha does here. This will encourage people to come back to the next class. In New Mexico, we're now providing a cutting board as the incentive for the fruit and vegetable lesson.
So does anybody have any questions before we leave today? So I hope to see you all next week. I'll be here a little early. If anybody wants to come and share anything with me before class, feel free to come by. I'll be here. Okay, is there anything else, any other questions anybody has? Oh, well, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week.
So Bertha's finished her lesson with her participants. Let's wrap up a little bit with some of the background information at the end of our lesson plan. So turn to page 24. And on page 24 and 25, we have a couple of additional activities you might like to do with your participants if you have time. The one on page 24 is talking about food safety. And this is where your participants work together to think about some ways to keep food safe as they're shopping for their families. Now the other one is talking about saving money while you're going shopping at the grocery store. And this is where participants can really provide some ideas that help each other out. For example, going to the grocery store only once a week so that you don't go so many times that you end up buying more than you need, shopping without your children if that's at all possible, being flexible to see what's on sale and not necessarily having to stick to your list if there's something healthy that's on sale. These are just a couple of the ideas here. They really are good ideas, so I would recommend if you do have extra time, this is a nice activity to include. So turn to page 26, and this is where we start on the back section of the booklet that we have in every lesson, which says, do not distribute to participants. And so this is the information that is just for you as a nutrition educator, and we'll go through that quickly here. So first we're talking here a little bit about food security, and this gets into a little bit why it's important to plan your meals and your shopping trips to avoid going hungry, especially if you have limited resources. Then here a little bit more information about planning, how to go about planning meals. In the middle of this page, there's information about how much of each food group people should get every day. Then turn the page, we've got some more detail about making a shopping list, how to go about selecting a supermarket. This wasn't really talked about, but you may have some conversation about this with your participants, how to go about doing that. And you know, this is another thing here on page 29, talking about farmers markets, especially in New Mexico now, many of our farmers markets accept WIC and EBT. And so people can go with their WIC or EBT cards, go to the market and actually get tokens that they can use to buy unprocessed fresh fruits and vegetables. And it's a wonderful way to get to know the growers in your community. Many times the prices at farmers markets are very reasonable as well, and the produce is very fresh. There's also a bit of information about cooking ahead, safe handling of cooked foods, how to store those and thaw and reheat them. Some tips for saving money, and that was the additional activity that we just talked about. Here we go into our unit pricing, and so this is a little bit more information that would be helpful for you to review in terms of how do you calculate a unit price. And get your calculator out and you can work through these examples here. That'll be helpful for you. You can also look at price per person, so you want to think about how much it's going to cost to feed each member of your family, and that can be helpful too. Here's some information about coupons, and we don't really talk about that in this lesson plan, but participants may have questions about that. How about the dates that are on the package? There are a couple of different dates and what those dates mean. Food safety tips for shopping and for storing food over here. There's a lot of information here. And a little bit of information about lead poisoning here and how you can know, or some signs of lead poisoning, which can be an issue here, especially on the border, as Bertha talked about with pottery that's been made in Mexico. Particularly older pottery has high levels of lead in it many times. Okay, here's some information about the nutrition facts label, and this is good background for you. Here we have the whole label and the sections on it, what we can find out from each section. Here's a quick list of the daily reference values used on the label, so it shows you how many grams or milligrams make up 100% of the daily value for these different nutrients here. Talks a little bit more about the nutrients on the label, the claims on a label, their health claims, nutrient content claims. Some of this is probably more detail than you need. So, you know, if you're interested, that's fine, but it's definitely not something you would share with your participants unless somebody had a very specific question, perhaps after class. A little bit talking about organic foods and natural foods and what those claims mean, and then some references. So this is quite a long lesson. I urge you to go through it fairly carefully with your participants because planning and shopping and saving is going to go a long way to helping them make their families healthy and also be able to ensure that they have enough food to last until the end of the month. I hope you enjoy teaching the lesson. Good luck to you.